The imperial palace's defenses crumbled before their combined power. Astra led the charge, deflecting energy blasts with graceful waves of her hand while Nathan coordinated their teams through secure channels. Guards fell back in shock as their weapons turned against them, as doors sealed and opened by themselves, as the evolved Valkyrie demonstrated the very abilities the Empire had spent generations suppressing. The archives are 3 levels down. Astra communicated telepathically to their strike force. Remember, we are here to reveal the truth, not seek revenge. They fought their way through security checkpoints, their powers working in harmony. Nathan's medical knowledge had helped them understand how to amplify their abilities, how to work together without burning out. Now, that training proved invaluable. The sealed archives lay behind quantum-locked doors designed to resist any force. But they hadn't been designed to resist the combined mental energy of 20 evolved Valkyrie. The doors groaned, buckled, and finally yielded. Nathan, Astra called. The data cores. He rushed to the ancient terminals, connecting his medical interfaces. Historical records, genetic research, imperial edicts, the truth of generations of suppression began flowing into their broadcast systems. But before they could complete the upload, a slow clap echoed through the chamber. Emperor Thorin stepped from the shadows, flanked by elite guards carrying strange weapons. "My dear daughter," he sneered. "So predictable. Did you really think we wouldn't be prepared for this? That we hadn't planned for your eventual return?" The guards raised their weapons, neural disruptors, Nathan realized with horror. Designed to scramble the enhanced pathways in evolved Valkyrie brains. "You've forgotten something, Father," Astra said calmly. "You taught me that power lies in secrets kept. But true strength." She smiled, and Nathan saw in her expression the leader she had become. "True strength lies in truth shared." She raised her hands, and every screen in the palace, every communication device in the capital blazed to life. The archived footage played everywhere, the first emperor's genetic experiments, the systematic suppression of natural evolution, the lies told to generations of Valkyrie. "No." Thorin raised his own neural disruptor. "I won't let you destroy everything we've built." The blast shot toward Astra, but Nathan dove forward, injecting himself with a compound he'd developed, one that would temporarily grant human minds limited resistance to Valkyrie mental energy. The disruptor beam hit him instead. "Nathan." Astra's scream shook the foundations of the palace. The archive chamber trembled as her power surged, fueled by fear and love. But Nathan stood, shaking but alive. "I'm okay," he managed. The compound worked. Thorin stared in disbelief. "Impossible. A human mind shouldn't be able to." "You never understood, did you?" Nathan said, supported by Astra. "Evolution isn't about suppression. It's about adaptation, growth, connection." He looked at Astra. "Love." More evolved Valkyrie poured into the chamber, led by Lyra. Throughout the palace, guards were laying down arms as the truth spread. The evidence was undeniable, their people had been altered, limited, deceived. "It's over, Father," Astra said softly. "Our people deserve to choose their own path." Thorin looked around wildly, seeing his empire crumbling. With a snarl, he raised his weapon again, but this time, it floated from his hands, dismantling itself in midair. "I am my mother's daughter too," Astra reminded him. "And she always taught me that a true ruler serves their people, not their pride." The revolution was surprisingly bloodless. Once the truth was known, once people saw what was possible, the old order fell like autumn leaves. The evolved Valkyrie were not seeking vengeance, they wanted understanding, acceptance, the freedom to become what they were meant to be. Months later, Nathan stood with Astra on a balcony overlooking the capital. Below, Valkyrie children played openly with their abilities while their parents watched without fear. Schools had been established to help those with emerging powers understand and control them. The age of suppression was over. The genetic treatments? Astra asked, examining his latest research. Optional now, Nathan replied. For those who want to unlock their ancestral abilities safely. No more mandatory suppressions, no more hiding. He smiled. Though I have to admit, studying the interaction between human and Valkyrie neural patterns has opened up fascinating new possibilities. She turned to him, her eyes swirling with joy and mischief. Speaking of possibilities, she floated a small crystal box between them. Inside lay 2 rings, made from the same crystal as the palace spires. Ready to make our arrangement official? This time by choice. Nathan laughed, pulling her close. I thought I was supposed to be the one asking. You gave me the courage to be who I am, she whispered. Let me give you this. Their kiss was witnessed by the setting sun, its light refracting through the crystal spires of a city reborn. Above them, ships arrived daily carrying Valkyrie from across the galaxy, drawn by the promise of freedom, of evolution, of becoming what they were always meant to be. The Empire had wanted to contain what they saw as a defect. Instead, they had sparked a revolution of the heart, one that proved that sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as flaws, and the greatest love stories begin with the courage to see beyond surface appearances to the extraordinary potential within. As Nathan and Astra planned their future together, they knew their story would be told for generations, the human doctor who saw perfection where others saw defects, and the alien princess who taught her people that true evolution begins with acceptance, understanding, and love. The stars wheeled overhead, witnesses to a new chapter in Valkyrie history. And somewhere in the vast galaxy, other evolved beings were awakening, ready to join the renaissance that had begun with a forced marriage and blossomed into a revolution that changed everything. The journey to Vardani space took 3 days of careful navigation through unmapped sectors. Katarina's research vessel, the Hipparchus, was small enough to avoid most detection systems, but every passing hour felt like tempting fate. She spent the time studying everything humanity knew about Vardani biology, frustratingly little given their secretive nature. Proximity alert, the ship's AI announced, breaking her concentration. Vardani Border Patrol, bearing 347. Katarina's fingers flew across the control panel, activating the experimental cloaking technology she'd borrowed from her station's prototype lab. The shield wasn't perfect, but it only needed to work for a few more hours. Power signature masked, the AI confirmed. However, fuel reserves are at 30%. The cloaking field is consuming more energy than anticipated. Maintain course, Katarina ordered, watching the patrol vessel glide past on her screens. Its crystalline structure mimicked its creators, refracting light in ways that made it almost invisible against the starfield. The beauty of the design couldn't mask its deadly purpose. Vardani borders were defended with lethal efficiency. The coordinates Rain and LYV had provided led to a small asteroid belt orbiting a dying red dwarf. As the Hipparchus approached, Katarina detected a faint energy signature emanating from one of the larger rocks. A hidden dock materialized as she drew closer, carved directly into the asteroid's surface. Impressive, she muttered, guiding her ship into the concealed harbor. The dock's internal gravity engaged smoothly, and air rushed into the chamber as it pressurized. Katarina gathered her medical kit and took a deep breath, checking the translation matrix one final time. The airlock cycled, and she stepped into a corridor that seemed to be grown rather than built, its crystalline walls pulsing with soft bioluminescence. Rain waited for her, their tall form casting prismatic shadows across the floor. Dr. Novak, they greeted, their translated voice carrying both relief and tension. Thank you for coming. Please, follow me quickly. We've detected unusual activity in the sector. They moved through the facility with urgent steps. Your child, Katarina began, how long have they been ill? 8 cycles, Rain replied, their crystalline features clouding with what she recognized as grief. The modification manifested later than expected. We hoped it would remain dormant. What exactly was modified? Katarina pressed, but before Rain could answer, they arrived at a sealed chamber. LYV stood waiting, their form hunched with exhaustion. The chamber's door dissolved, revealing a sight that made Katarina stop short. The child lay on a biobed, their crystalline body structure flickering between transparency and opacity. But it was their cellular structure that caught her trained eye beneath the surface. Their cells were shifting, changing in a way that defied Vardani biological norms. By all the stars, Katarina breathed, approaching the bed. Her scanner hummed as she passed it over the child's form. These cellular patterns, they're attempting to adapt, to evolve. But the rate of change is too rapid for their system to handle. Yes, LYV said softly. Our people fear evolution above all else. We achieved perfection centuries ago, or so our leaders claim. Any deviation is seen as corruption. Katarina's scanner beeped with completed analysis. The results made her blood run cold. This isn't just evolution, she said, looking up at the parents. These are human genetic markers. Somehow, your child's cells are trying to incorporate human DNA patterns. The silence that followed was deafening. Rain and LYV exchanged looks that carried volumes of unspoken meaning. You knew, Katarina realized. You knew this would happen. That's why you sought me specifically. Not just for my research, but because. A blaring alarm cut through the facility, its crystalline walls flashing red. LYV rushed to a control panel. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL, they reported, fear evident in their voice. Vardani Security Force vessels. They followed me. Katarina asked, but Rain shook their head. No. We've been betrayed. Someone in our research network must have discovered our location. They turned to Katarina, their crystalline form rigid with determination. Doctor, you must understand quickly. Years ago, we were part of a classified project studying human adaptability, your species' remarkable ability to survive and evolve. We believed incorporating these traits into our own genetic structure could save our people from stagnation. The project was discovered, LYV continued, monitoring the approaching ships. All research was destroyed, all participants executed. Except us. We had already used the research on ourselves, modified our reproductive cells. We thought we could control the expression in our child, but human DNA is aggressive, Katarina finished, understanding dawning. It's attempting to rewrite their entire genetic structure. Her mind raced through possibilities, calculations, desperate options. I need a fully equipped lab, specific human medical compounds. The facility shuddered as the first docking attempt began. Rain moved to a wall, pressing their hand against it. A hidden compartment opened, revealing a data crystal. Everything is here, our research, our findings, the complete genetic sequence. Take it. If we cannot save our child, perhaps the knowledge can save others. I'm not leaving, Katarina said firmly, returning to her scanner. The cellular degradation can be stopped, but I need time. Time is the one thing we don't have, Elvivy said sadly, moving to embrace their child. The security forces would breach the facility within minutes. Katarina looked at her scanner, at the terrified parents, at the child fighting a battle in every cell of their body. She thought of her comfortable research station, her prestigious career, everything she stood to lose. Then she thought of all the lives that could be saved with this knowledge, all the barriers between species that could be broken. Trust me, she said, pulling equipment from her medical kit. I didn't come this far to give up. And I have a plan. The facility's walls continued to pulse red as Katarina began her work. Outside, Vardani security ships moved into position, their weapons charged. The next few minutes would determine not just the fate of one child, but potentially the future of two species. And Katarina Novak, who had spent her life studying the bridges between different forms of life, prepared to build one more or die trying. Katarina's fingers moved with practiced precision across her medical equipment while the facility's walls trembled under the security forces' attempts to breach the outer defenses. The child's crystalline form pulsed with increasing irregularity, each flash revealing the cellular battle raging within. Your defense systems, she called to Rain while preparing a stabilizing compound. How long will they hold? Minutes at most, Rain replied, their hands dancing across control panels. They're using quantum resonators to destabilize the crystal structure. Katarina nodded, not looking up from her work. Long enough. Elvivy, I need you to tell me everything about the human DNA implementation. Every detail matters now. Elvivy moved closer, their crystalline form reflecting the emergency lights in fractured patterns. The original project aimed to incorporate human adaptability traits without altering our basic physical structure. We succeeded in isolating the genetic sequences responsible for rapid cellular adaptation, but you didn't account for genetic drift, Katarina finished, studying the readings on her scanner. Human DNA isn't just adaptable, it's aggressive. It wants to survive, to evolve. In your child's case, it's trying to force evolution at a cellular level. A particularly violent shudder ran through the facility. Rain's voice carried barely controlled panic. They've breached the outer layer. Inner defenses engaging, but they won't last long. Katarina cursed under her breath, then froze as her scanner revealed something unexpected. This is impossible, she whispered, recalibrating the device. The readings remained unchanged. What is it? Elvivy asked, moving to look at the display. The human DNA isn't just forcing evolution, Katarina explained, her voice filled with wonder and horror. It's creating a perfect hybrid state. Your child's cells are attempting to combine the best aspects of both species, Vardani crystalline structure with human adaptability. If successful, they would be an abomination, came a new voice from the chamber entrance. All heads turned to see a tall Vardani figure in ornate armor, flanked by security forces. The crystalline plates of their uniform bore the markings of high command. Archontine, Rain breathed, moving protectively toward their child. The Archon's form sparkled with barely contained rage. Rain and LYV of the third sphere, you are charged with genetic heresy, unauthorized contact with outsiders, and the corruption of our species' purity. Their gaze shifted to Katarina. And you, human, have violated multiple treaties by entering our space. They asked for my help, Katarina replied calmly, continuing her work despite the weapons trained on her. Their child is dying. That child represents everything we have fought to prevent, the Archon declared. Our species achieved perfection generations ago. Evolution is a disease we purged from our genetic destiny. Katarina laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Perfection? You've engineered your own extinction. A species that can't adapt is doomed to die. Your perfect form won't save you when your environment changes, when new diseases emerge, when. Silence. The Archon's form flashed with anger. Our civilization has stood unchanged for millennia while others rise and fall. We will not be lectured by a primitive species that still allows random chance to dictate their development. You are right about one thing, Katarina said, keying in final commands to her medical unit. We do leave things to chance. Like the chance I took in coming here. The chance these parents took in seeking help. And the chance I'm taking now. Before anyone could react, she pressed a final button on her device. A soft pulse emanated from it, washing over the room. The security forces' weapons instantly powered down. What have you done? The Archon demanded. Electromagnetic pulse, tuned to your technology's specific frequency, Katarina explained, moving to stand between the armed forces and her patient. I studied everything we knew about Vardani tech while traveling here. Your crystalline technology is remarkable, but predictable. You haven't changed it in generations, after all. She turned to Rain and LYV. The pulse won't last long, but it gave me the seconds I needed. The stabilizing compound is ready. She held up a vial of shimmering liquid. This will halt the cellular degradation, give us time to properly manage the integration. You will do no such thing, the Archon declared, though their weapons remained inert. Guards, take them. But as the security forces moved forward, the child on the bed began to glow with an intense inner light. All movement in the room ceased as they watched crystalline flesh become translucent, revealing a cellular structure that was neither human nor Vardani, but something gloriously in between. Remarkable, Katarina breathed, her scanner tracking the changes. The compound isn't just stabilizing the process, it's completing it. Your child isn't dying. They're becoming what both our species could be. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of transformation. Even the Archon seemed transfixed by the sight. In that moment of shared wonder, Katarina saw the potential for something greater than either civilization had imagined. The question was whether fear or hope would win the next crucial moments. She caught Rain and LYV's eyes, saw their determination matched her own. Whatever came next, they had witnessed the beginning of change that could no longer be stopped. The true test would be convincing others to see not an abomination, but a bridge between worlds. The child's glow began to fade, revealing their new form. The next few minutes would determine not just their fate, but potentially the future of both species. And Katarina Novak, who had crossed the stars to save one life, found herself at the center of a moment that could reshape the galaxy. The transformed child Saturday up on the biobed, their new form catching light in ways that defied conventional physics. Their crystalline structure remained, but beneath it flowed something unmistakably human, adaptable, resilient, alive. The security forces stood frozen, their disabled weapons forgotten in their hands as they witnessed what their society had feared for generations. "Hello, little one," Katarina said softly, her scanner continuing to record the miraculous changes. The child's eyes opened, revealing irises that shifted like liquid crystal, displaying a consciousness that seemed both ancient and newborn. "This is impossible," Archon whispered, their rigid composure cracking. "Our simulations showed hybrid forms would be unstable, monstrous." "Your simulations were based on fear, not science," Katarina replied, never taking her eyes off her patient. "You were so convinced that change meant destruction that you never considered it might mean evolution." The child turned to their parents, reaching out with hands that sparkled with internal light. Rain and Lviv moved forward despite the guards, drawn by a force stronger than duty or law. The moment their hands touched, a soft resonance filled the chamber, like crystal singing. "Neural synchronization," Katarina's scanner reported. "They are communicating on both crystalline and synaptic frequencies simultaneously." She looked up at the Archon. "Your people valued stability because it meant control. But look at what you are giving up, the ability to grow, to change, to become something greater than the sum of your parts." "And who would we become?" the Archon demanded, though their voice had lost its edge of certainty. "Our civilization is built on consistency, on knowing our place in the universe. This changes everything." "That's rather the point," came a new voice, the child's. It carried both the crystalline resonance of the Vardani and the worn timbre of human speech. The entire room stilled at the sound. "I can see them both," the child continued, looking around with their shifting eyes. "The crystal paths you fear to alter, and the flowing rivers of human potential. They are not opposed, they are complementary. Structure and change, permanence and growth." Katarina's scanner beeped urgently. "Remarkable," she breathed. "Their neural architecture is completely stable. They are processing information through both crystalline and organic pathways, achieving computational speeds that should be impossible." The security forces stirred uneasily, looking to their Archon for direction. But Tyne seemed transfixed by the child, their own crystalline form reflecting the hybrid's glow. "The records speak of a time before the Great Stagnation," Tyne said quietly, almost to themselves. "When our people still dreamed of what we might become. We chose stability because we had seen too much war, too much chaos. We thought perfection would save us." "Perfection is a destination," the child said, standing now. Their movement was liquid grace contained within crystal precision. "Evolution is a journey. Both have their place." Suddenly, alarms blared through the facility again. Rain rushed to a console, their movements sharp with renewed fear. Multiple vessels entering the system. Heavy cruisers, bearing Vardani High Command markings. "They'll destroy everything," Lviv said, moving to shield their child. "The facility, the research, all of us. They can't allow even the possibility of this knowledge spreading." Katarina's mind raced. Her ship was fast, but not fast enough to outrun a Vardani battle fleet. The facility's defenses were compromised. They had perhaps minutes before the High Command arrived to ensure their society's precious stability remained unthreatened. But as she looked at the child, this beautiful bridge between worlds, she realized that destruction wasn't the only option. The Vardani valued order above all else. Perhaps it was time to show them a new kind of order. "Archon," she said, turning to Tyne. Your people follow hierarchy, respect chain of command. You have authority here. You've seen what's possible. The choice before you isn't between perfection and chaos, it's between stagnation and growth. Between dying slowly and living fully. The facility shuddered as the first warning shots from the approaching fleet struck its outer shields. Tyne stood rigid, crystalline features reflecting the emergency lights as they wavered between duty and possibility. The child stepped forward, offering their hand to the Archon. "Let me show you," they said simply. In that moment, as alarms screamed and the facility trembled, as two civilizations teetered on the brink of either war or transformation, everything hung on a single choice. Katarina held her breath, watching the Archon's hand move slowly toward the child's outstretched fingers. The touch, when it came, filled the chamber with light. The light that filled the chamber when Archon Tyne touched the child's hand was unlike anything Katarina had ever seen. It wasn't just illumination, it was communication made visible, understanding given form. Through her scanner, she watched as crystalline neural patterns synchronized, information flowing between the Archon and the child in cascading waves of light and knowledge. When the glow faded, Tyne's crystalline form had changed subtly, catching light in new ways. Their rigid posture had softened, and their eyes held something that hadn't been there before: wonder. "I understand now," the Archon said, their voice carrying new depths. "The patterns, they're endless. We thought we had reached the end, but we had only stopped at the beginning." The facility rocked with another impact from the approaching fleet. Rain's voice was urgent at the controls. "High command vessels entering weapons range. They're preparing to fire main batteries." "No," Tyne said, straightening to their full height. "They will listen." They moved to the communication array, their crystalline armor catching emergency lights like frozen fire. "This is Archon Tyne. Hold your fire and stand down." "Archon," a new voice crackled through the speakers, "our sensors detect contamination. The facility must be cleansed. Stand aside." "You will hold your fire," Tyne repeated, and now their voice carried harmonics that made the very walls resonate. "By the authority of my position and the wisdom of our ancestors, I invoke the right of evolution." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the facility's alarms seemed to quiet in respect. "The right of evolution?" Katarina whispered to Lviv. "An ancient law," Lviv explained, hope creeping into their voice. "From before the Great Stagnation. It gives an Archon the power to authorize controlled change, if they deem it necessary for our species' survival. It hasn't been invoked in 1,000 years, Rain added. Most thought it was just a legend. The High Command's response, when it came, was heavy with disbelief. "Archon, you cannot be serious. The law demands." "The law demands we survive," Tyne cut in. "And survival requires adaptation. I have seen what lies before us, not corruption, but completion. Not chaos, but complexity." They turned to the child, who stood calmly in the center of the storm. "Show them." The child nodded and closed their eyes. The facility's communication array hummed as data began to flow, not just words or images, but direct neural patterns, the experience of being both crystal and fluid, both permanent and changing. Katarina's scanner nearly overloaded trying to track the transmission. "They're sharing everything," she breathed. "The neural architecture, the stable hybrid state, the enhanced computational abilities. Not just the results, the experience of them." Minutes passed in tense silence as the data flowed. Finally, A new voice came from the high command vessel, older, deeper, carrying the weight of supreme authority. Archon, you understand the significance of invoking this right? The responsibility you claim. I do, Tyne replied. I have seen our future. Not in the death of what we are, but in the birth of what we might become. Another long pause. Katarina held her breath, acutely aware that the fate of not just this child, but potentially both their species, hung in the balance. The right of evolution is acknowledged, the voice finally declared. A conclave will be called. All data will be reviewed. Changes will be considered. The tension in the room broke like a crystal wave. Rain and Lviv embraced their child, their forms shimmering with joy and relief. The security forces lowered their weapons, many of them staring at the child with newfound wonder rather than fear. Dr. Novak, Tyne said, turning to her. It seems we owe you a debt. And perhaps an opportunity. Katarina raised an eyebrow. Oh, our people will need guidance in this transition. Understanding of human biological processes, of how to manage controlled evolution rather than fear it. Would you be willing to stay? To help us find this new path? Katarina looked at her scanner, still recording the miracle of successful hybridization. She thought of her quiet research station, of all the papers she had written about building bridges between species. Theory was becoming reality before her eyes. I'll stay, she said. On one condition, this knowledge flows both ways. It's time both our species learned to grow together. Tyne's crystalline features shifted in what she now recognized as a smile. Agreed. After all, is that not the lesson we have learned? That the greatest strength comes not from rigid isolation, but from the courage to reach across the void and find new ways of being? The child stepped forward, taking both Katarina's hand and Tyne's in their own. Where their skin touched, light bloomed, not the harsh glare of transformation now, but the gentle glow of possibility. Outside the facility's windows, the Vardani fleet hung suspended against the stars, their crystalline hulls refracting light in complex patterns. But now those patterns seemed less like barriers and more like bridges, spanning the distance between what was and what could be. Katarina smiled, thinking of all the scientists throughout history who had dreamed of this moment when two species could truly begin to understand each other, to grow together, to become more than the sum of their parts. The journey ahead would not be easy, but the first step had been taken. And it had started, as so many great things do, with parents who loved their child enough to risk everything for a chance at something new.